Sweet, start the recording. But yeah, anyways, fragmented Italy, a lot of like little city states, all vying for power. Machiavelli, not from a rich family or anything like that, and he was a Florentian. I don't know how you say it, but he was a big diplomat in this republic. He ended up kind of coming to like a he was like some sort of like vice chancellor, like not an absolute power unit, but like someone with influence, someone who understood. He was sent oftentimes on like diplomatic missions, and he would meet people like the Pope and stuff during his career. However, this whole book is kind of like a small guide, a rule book on how to rule as a tyrant, like a dictator's how to, like a little a cheat sheet for anyone who wants to gain power, stay in power, and increase their power, which contrasts completely from any of the ideals or any of the academic work at the time, because as we know with books like the Republic or Cicero's De Republica or whatever it's called, they were all tying ethics and politics together. They were all like one thing. They wanted the rulers to be just. They wanted like a good society, morals, etc. Machiavelli kind of turned it on its head and he said, no, let's completely separate. Let's cut a line between what should be ethical and what should be political. Right? Let's like sever this tie that's been instituted for a long time. There's a lot of debate in scholarship on whether or not this was a satirical book or whether or not this was like an honest book. But what we do know is that Machiavelli, at least on paper, he was like a noble guy. He was pretty civil. He followed customs, followed rules, obeyed the law, wasn't an asshole. He had friends. So like from his character at least, he wasn't some sort of dude who just wanted to like gain complete power and like be a dick to everyone, like some sort of dictator. But he wrote this, the letter, or not the letter, but he wrote this towards the Medici family, who was one of the most powerful families at the time in Florence. Um, and yeah, so he talks a lot. He talks a lot about how to get into power, understand the people, be wary of the aristocrats, and so on. So that's kind of where I'm gonna leave it off. I'm sure I missed a ton of stuff. A couple more small things, I guess, would be like what just going through this book. He wrote a couple of other papers afterwards, so on, so on. Mm. He had, yeah, like I mentioned, he had the opportunity to meet people like the King Louis, the Duke of Valentino, Emperor Maximilian, and so on. So he was very like involved in this whole like diplomatic uh, stuff arena over in Italy at the time. I'm sure I missed a ton of things, but now I will call on to my good friend Bruno to fill in the gaps if there are big things that I've missed. Also, if you
No, I mean, I don't.
like return and stuff, Bruno, he's a buddy from university over at UBC, but now living in Hong Kong. So hi, Bruno.
Hello, everyone.
Cool.
No, I don't know anything about this guy, but I will say one thing that I think was interesting just from the introduction of my edition of it is that it sounds like Machiavelli, he uh, came to this position of as a diplomat in a new government that had established itself in Florence in opposition to the Medicis, which was run by this guy Soderini. Um, and then once the Medicis took power again, kind of by force, he was then exiled. And then it was in exile that he wrote this book and dedicated it to Medici. So the guy who wrote the introduction to my version of the book is kind of speculating that, there's kind of two ways to read it. It's either a satire where he's maybe mocking Medici from afar, or it's him trying to kind of court favor and you know uh, uh, earn a position in Medici's new government. So I guess that kind of gives you two radically different readings of the book. But I find it interesting. It's like, if this book is about how to gain power, how to manipulate your way into power, and then actually his intention for writing the book was uh, itself to gain power. It kind of adds a a layer to it. So I thought that was interesting and important. Like here, I can read from my introduction. Wait. Uh, he says Machiavelli turned to the traditional resource of the scholar, reading in the classics in his exile, not only for diversion but in desperation. He hoped that by doing so he could not only understand his situation, but prove his supreme expertise, and by doing so win a position with the new government of the Medici, one in which his talents would not rust in rural isolation. So, and then that's why the book begins, or that's, one possible reason for why the book is dedicated to the Medicis in the beginning, or Lorenzo de' Medici. So, just thought it was an important point.
In this edition, they go similar routes, but like a little bit different. In this introduction with who is the something with a B, I don't know, some Italian scholar with a B. But he says there was two reasons that he wrote the book. One was to warn the general population. It was kind of like he wrote the cheat sheet for how to become a dictator, but it was kind of like a
Um,
warning to all the population to like look out for the signs for what a tyrant or what like someone in power would be looking for. So like a warning basically. That's like the stronger
yeah,
argument this introduction like is saying, and then the weaker one is by Diderot in the encyclopedia or whatever. He says that
yeah,
it was the fault of his contemporaries if they misunderstood what he was getting at. Like a satire, right? Like a type of satire or a
yeah,
eulogy. So that's the two ways my introduction kind of went with this.
Um,
interesting.
yeah, so I think from the if we're gonna take the epistle sorry, language dedicatory dedicate I don't know. You understand what I'm saying. If we take it at face value, it definitely seems to be the case that he is at least trying to court favor
Yeah,
with the Medici family. Um as to, regarding the like his overall intention. I don't know if we're sort of trying to understand if the whole work is really his intent, like if he really believes these things. um I know somewhere and we'll get to it like maybe next meeting, but somewhere in the book he sort of redefines what virtue looks like. um for him, virtue comes to mean something like strength or power, sort of like um I think one of Socrates' interlocutors, he says that justice is the advantage of the strong. That that seems to be
How do you
what he
imagine?
redefines virtue to be. Yeah, yeah.
um,
Um, and so it's not like he's making a political claim without making a moral claim. It seems that he's making a moral claim as well as a political claim that flows from it. Whether or not he's attached to that moral claim, that's also a different story. But um,
well, I'll
there are
say,
two.
yeah, it's a good point. But in the so in the introduction to the version that I have, he does make kind of a point about I think the word in the original is virtu. So I think that sometimes gets translated as virtue. But then my
Mhm.
translator makes the case that it could maybe better be translated as prowess. So it's not so clear exactly what the virtue means. But I guess we'll get into it as we read because I haven't started it yet. But it could, I
Yeah, my
mean,
intro also
yeah,
explores the meaning of virtue.
yeah. So
He
because
doesn't.
virtue, I mean, virtue is kind of, it was it's not clear that it always meant something moral. I mean, like if you go way back, like the Homeric virtues, he famously includes like nimble-footedness, right? So it's like virtues just seem to be like they can be in some way just like uh things that can help you achieve certain ends, or like goods that help you achieve certain ends. So I guess we'll see. I don't know in Machiavelli's case how he uses it, but we'll
Mm.
see, I guess. And also an interesting point about the yeah, sorry.
Like the whole point of the book is what was I gonna say? Yeah, like with virtues, yeah, we have the Homeric virtues. They're like glory, honor, etc., being like a kick-ass Michael Bay type films guy. And then you have the whole like Socratic Aristotelian virtues, justice, courage, etc. And then what's kind of like interesting to me at least is that like going back to something I mentioned very very like earlier, it was that he never read any of the Greek um like any Greek literature. in its own words. It was also always translations if he even did read that stuff. So I don't know how he's using virtue as a term or virtue. Is that in Italian or Latin?
Yeah. I have no idea. I should
Um,
probably figure this out.
well, the Italian and Latin are kind of interconnected, so maybe both.
Maybe.
Um, yeah, there's so
also, just one. Oh, sorry.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
you can. No, I was just gonna say one more interesting thing about the dedication, since you brought it up, is that he, like, kind of most of the dedication is him saying like, "Oh, I hope you accept this in this certain specific way." So it's almost like he's trying to uh, he's trying to temper the Medici guy to read this book in a very specific way, where he says like, "Oh, I hope you accept." Like, I think at one point he says like, "Accept this in the spirit in which it was intended." So that could, I mean, I don't know, like that kind of shows that maybe Machiavelli did know to some extent that this could be kind of provocative, especially to someone who's a ruler, right? It could be interpreted as maybe not uh, kind of a dig, or as Chris said, like a warning to the people. And so in the dedication, he kind of like tempers the Medici guy. He's like, look, just accept, this is just like a gift. Like, don't look too closely into this. So I thought that was interesting about the dedication.
Mm. Was anyone going to speak on the political state of the Italian states at the time?
Yeah, I don't know if you joined in like a tiny bit late, but it was a very, very fragmented Italy. It was a city-state
Yeah.
type of Italy, just like Greece was, a couple thousand years back. It had all of its own separate kingdoms. They weren't united yet at the time of like this writing. So they were all kind of vying for power, but on the same side at the same time. It was like weird, especially with big superpowers with like Spain and France at the time. They're always concerned about their might. Machiavelli, one of his biggest things was like pointing out or noting that the any Italian state or even all the Italian states combined or all the city states combined, they were very, very weak, both like politically and militarily at the time. Especially when you compare them to like the superpowers. So like it wasn't. I think this book wasn't just written as a type of like getting to power politically, but also like there's like a little like flavor or hint of getting into power militarily, right? Because he talks about arming. I think one of the lines in my introduction or like in the book was when you arm the unarmed, they become your arm, right? So his whole idea, he wanted to like put weapons in the hands of all of the people at the time to like vie for this type of like a military strength, basically. They even got like they were just ruled by like mercenaries at the time. They had no like standing armies or anything like that. Um, but that's all I know. I'm not like a scholar or anything like that in like the Italian history or anything. I would love for someone to like chime in though if they know more.
I'm Italian. I should know more. It's a shame, but I don't know anything.
Yeah, it's also interesting, like Machiavellianism. That's a mouthful. Machiavellianism. It's actually like a field of study now, in social psychology or like personality psychology. It's its own like trait. So this guy actually like he had a big impact on not just I guess politics, not just I guess philosophy, but also he started like dipping his toes into psychology. Nowadays, you talk to someone about what Machiavellianism is, just like Kafka-esque. Like they'll recognize the term. Unfortunate though, because I don't
Yeah,
think
I
the
mean,
guy
another.
would have read. He wasn't a total dick. He wasn't someone who like always wanted power
No.
as a person. He was like noble relatively.
Yeah, I
You,
can say one more thing just about the influence of Machiavelli. It's interesting because even like uh, contemporary philosophers, uh, some draw an influence from Machiavelli. Like my favorite contemporary guy, Alistair McIntyre, in his book After Virtue, he makes like a big stink about Machiavelli's Fortuna, and he kind of like the goddess Fortuna of fortune, who Machiavelli kind of portrays as like this force of nature that creates this unpredictability. That you can only shield yourself from like historical contingency so far, but at the end of the day, you might get wiped out by the incoming medicis or whatever. And Alistair McIntyre uses that as part of his whole system. It's actually like a key component because he uses that to argue against philosophies that are like historically deterministic. Like something like Marxism, where he thinks that history is just too it's dominated by fortune. It's too contingent. There's no historical necessity. It's just interesting to see, even like in a field far removed, Machiavelli has had like contemporary virtue ethics. I guess it's not that far removed if he's talking about virtue, but it's interesting to see that his thinking is still relevant. Yeah,
It's interesting.
I have virtue defined.
I know.
Oh, sorry, go for it.
No, you go ahead. I'm still formulating my thought.
Hamsters running the wheel in there. Yeah, no, I have virtue defined like as, or like I did a quick Google search. Virtue was defined in like Machiavelli. It was defined as like skill, adaptability, and decisiveness in shaping events. So very, very different than any type of virtue you'd learn from the Greeks or like hell even the Romans. So it was just like being cunning, I guess. Virtue was analogous to being cunning. Um, ends justify the means is the whole, I guess, spiel of the book, which, frick, that kind of sounds kind of like utilitarian. I'm thinking about it.
well, yeah. I mean, that's why I think in this book, in my translation, he doesn't even translate it as virtue. He translates it as prowess, which is it's because I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see when we get into reading if the translation stuff will be a problem. But
Have any of you guys got into reading the actual book?
Um, I was studying for final exams, but I read it before.
Where are you studying?
For final exams?
Yeah.
What classes am I taking? Well, I had 5 exams. I had ancient to medieval philosophy.
wow.
That exam covered Spinoza. Hold on, give me a second.
Augustine, I hope. That's also one book I wanted to read, The Whole Confessions again. That would make cool beans.
I was thinking about reading that again. Yeah.
Yeah, Augustine, but not so not so much Augustine. There's another class that covers him more, but it was mostly focused on. Well, there was the other second half of the class earlier covered other philosophers, but this exam was covering Spinoza, and Leibniz, and Descartes, Bacon, Occam, and sort of the metaphysical transition from realism to nominalism, and the sort of consequences of that, how metaphysics came to be seen as something theological, to something more sort of without end, right? Like nature as something comprised of a multiplicity of forces that aren't really unified or harmonized in any way. It's just law without end. We see that in Locke and Leibniz. And then there is a logic, pretty straightforward. Logic, contemporary philosophical approaches. That's huh?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
The worst class I did in.
I don't know. I will recognize that like most of my class struggled with logic. It's just it seems pretty intuitive to me. Um, um, I don't. It's hard. It's hard. I'm tied to my perspective, but I just don't really see the struggle. I mean, sure, like there's a lot of specifications, and it might not everyone not might be used to like thinking of logic in this. There's a professor of mine that has a phrase, spider logic, right? That's just all these little ties and and um, systems. It's systematic, but I don't know. It's just if you understand the like the general concept, I think It's fine. I don't know. Is logic that complicated? I don't know. I don't think so, but
In
maybe the logic I studied was
principle to me, like
easier.
all of the rules, modus tollens, pons, whatever, like all that stuff, it
Uh,
makes sense. I can do the symbol stuff, but once you start throwing like universal quantifiers and all that like funky stuff, I just lose it. I'm like, what the
it's
hell's
just
going on?
yeah, that's fair. Logic, contemporary philosophical approaches. It's a class that introduces you to a variety of authors, but each of them is meant to represent a type of philosophical method. So, continental, analytical. My school considers the Thomistic method a method in itself. Um,
Oh,
it's sort of like a combination of the analytical and continental in that it admits of experiences, um, typically authoritative, and the experience revealed by revelation. But it's also combined with the analytical method in that it starts to make distinctions between the ideas uh, presented by scriptural authorities and church authorities, um, and it breaks those things apart into its parts to analyze and extract the truth from it, the logical truth. Um, there's that class, and let's see, chemistry, and
What do you
I'm,
study?
I'm, I'm missing one. Ethics,
Curveball.
ethics. uh, chemistry. It was just a like base requirement I have to get out of the way. Physical science. Um,
wow, it sounds like you have a good program though. Those classes
yeah,
sound very interesting.
yeah. Ethics was uh, sort of studying Enlightenment philosophers. So Hume, um, not Locke, um, Hume, Kant, and John Stuart Mill, and then we compared him to Thomas Aquinas. Um, they all sort of have something that can be found in Thomas Aquinas. Um,
There's
and
also
again, it's a Catholic university, so there's a bias there. um,
like
but,
on that
but yeah,
topic, I think there was like a couple lines or like sentences in my introduction about uh it was barred, or I don't know what they call it, but like this text was barred by the papal state or by the church at the time. They just like they didn't let people read it who were associated with the church. I don't know.
it makes sense.
Like I'm very curious as to what the like what the interactions must have been between scholars at the time, because Italy was like kind of like a hub at the time for scholarship, um, relating to like Greek stuff and Roman stuff. But I
Mhm.
really wonder what the interactions must have been between like the papal state or just like the churches at the time, and then this book when it came out. Because like he wasn't after his initial exile, he wasn't exiled again, or he wasn't like condemned again, or like sought out to be like assassinated or some shit, like other philosophers have been for writing, funky things. But
Mhm.
yeah, this seems like a very dangerous thing to write when you're right beside the church.
It's ballsy, yeah. Yeah,
When did he write this again? Do you guys know the year?
it's like 1400s.
14,
So,
like 1400, like 1498, I think. I don't know. I have it here somewhere.
oh wait, actually 1300s. Oh wait, no, 1400s, right? You're
Oh
right.
no.
You're right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
He was born
Uh,
1469, so probably like late 1400s.
yeah.
1490.
Uh, yeah, so at the turn of modernity, a lot of people attribute the start of modernity to him.
Mhm.
yeah.
Be, but you can also see similar ideas in Bacon, who also contributes to modernity. Generally the idea of conquering nature or fortune um, is a modern idea.
Was Bacon the guy that started essays, or was that Montaigne? Or, I have a book like collecting
Well,
stuff I haven't read on Bacon, but
Bacon has essays,
yeah.
I think, but like I don't know if he's known for them. He's more so known for his new organon and the instauration. Um, where he's like, hey, your mind, it's kind of weak. Stop like theorizing about things beyond your experience. Yeah.
Essay in French means attempt or try, which is pretty interesting. Like an anecdote. I
Yeah.
like the essay, like the try. Every time you're writing an essay, you're just trying.
I have a professor who sort of tried to address our anxiety that way. She said, you know, essay means to try, so a good essay means a good attempt. So just make a good attempt.
Fact, philosophers are useless.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
they do is try.
Yeah.
What year are
Um,
you in, Ego? In
I'm
your
a third
degree?
year junior. Yeah.
Oh, you should
Um,
enjoy it, man. Once you
yeah,
graduate,
it's
you'll end up like me, waking up at 6 a.m. to come to these stupid book clubs.
Or you start some
6
fucking
a.m.
idiotic meme page.
Oh, yeah, you're in Japan.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. This book club is great, Chris. Thank you for hosting this,
Yeah, no, I need.
Well, I have.
Sorry, go for
Go
it.
ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying I need to like keep my philosophical itch at bay, one way or another. I just
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I have a sort of group, like an in-person group. Um, not with friends from university because they're from all over the place, but before I started university, I started like a group with. I went to a community college during high school for dual credit, and I started one with a professor there, and he invites the students, and but it's not as rewarding as this because the students, well, they're not really familiar with any philosophical works, and they're sort of it was rewarding, but in a different way, you know. It's a
Yeah.
it's a different of a conversation.
Yeah, I don't know like what line to walk with this with these like book clubs or just like anything I guess in the Discord or stuff like that because there are people that are very like philosophically apt or like apt like that. I don't know. They're very good like they're well versed, they know their stuff. They've been studying it, they have degrees whatever. And there's a bunch of other people that I want to like help introduce to philosophy and I don't know how to do that exactly. It's like what you just recommend them like Plato dialogues or something. How did you guys
That does seem to be the way.
Ego, how did you get into philosophy? What was your like your intro?
My gateway.
Yeah, your
Uh, it was Leo Strauss, a more contemporary philosopher. Um, so I was introduced to philosophy through the concept of natural law. At the time, I was sort of a not an atheist. What's that
agnostic.
term that as somebody who doesn't believe that anything has meaning?
Ah,
Nihilist. Yeah. So when a professor he was teaching about natural law and sort of how it has its influence on the founding of America, I'm like, well, that supposes a an innate structure to reality, and that was interesting to me because I was a nihilist. So I would go to his office hours, try to get a better understanding of natural law, and so he pointed me to Leo Strauss, a work called Natural Right and History, um, and so that Leo Strauss he's really influenced by Socrates and Plato, and so that sort of pointed me to Plato's dialogues, and so really I would say the gateway was Plato, but um, but it was
been there.
technically Leo Strauss who pointed me to him. It was a lot of pointing. There's a lot of pointing going on in my life. Um, but yeah, that was it.
Interesting.
But I think anyone who like wants to get started in philosophy, they kind of they it's really just it is just a little like train of pointing. I'd say, you want to understand something a little bit better, then you talk to someone about it, and they probably have someone that they read, and then they read that what they read, and then if you keep going down, you're gonna run into a philosopher,
Yeah.
like
Eventually.
in a footnote.
My introduction talks about oration versus a treatise, right? So there's also like a debate apparently that this book was written as a type of oration versus a treaty. And if it's written as a type of oration, then you're kind of like it's no longer some sort of philosophical argument or statement. It's just like a Homeric hymn or like some sort of like story, like some nice words. And and this is said in it, and I thought it was like kind of cool. It says that eloquence or the way you speak or present a point. Eloquence is the breastplate and sword with which we defend ourselves and the common good against our enemies and the enemies of the republic. So it was like saying, or at least the way I understand it, it was saying that like the biggest weapon that you can have is oration. And I think that's a pretty good argument to treat this book like an oratory thing versus some sort of treatise like what like Kant's writings, right? Some sort of like rule book.
Right.
But that's tricky because it's also
Yeah.
like a rule book.
Yeah. It's yeah. Yeah, an oration, even though it seems to incorporate ideas that might be derived from a treatise, isn't at all trying to explicate them. But more so present it, maybe even move people with it. Though a treatise can do the same, but not in the same way.
Yeah, like
A treatise can move people and present ideas, but it does it in a different way.
yeah, I think like a step by step. Because Machiavelli was all into Latin and Roman stuff. So one thing that Cicero wrote was like it was a step-by-step guide on how to write like a proper type of book that Machiavelli wanted to write, and he followed it like verbatim almost. And one of the first things that you like, one of the first steps is to set up the the reader, put them. I think he said like put them in the same mind, in the appropriate mind state to receive what they're gonna read, which is different than a
Mhm.
treatise. Just like a treatise, just like plopping all of the facts or like all of the arguments right in front of you.
Right.
Whereas something else closer to like a convincing or a persuasion, you'd also need to keep in mind the psychology of the reader, put them in the right like mind space, and then in doing so, you can like feed them whatever the hell you want.
In a way, it seems like the like Socratic dialogues are sort of both a little bit. They're like the conversations sort of getting you started in that mode, right? Like, oh yeah, what is goodness anyway, right?
Mhm.
And then it sort of transitions into a more treatise style where it's just instead of just raw, thinking about the ideas, now it's just a systematic conversation or argument. Like, okay, well, if that's true, then this is true. Well, that's not true because this other thing is true, and they're contradictories.
Yeah, exactly. We were
It's like
talking
a
about that last book club with the Republic. It was like each
mhm.
point being made is like you're prepared, you're getting prepared for it. Like you're never shown explicitly what it is at first at face value. It's like you're being guided. Like, you're being guided through like a train of thought or like through a series of like sentences or like conversations, which is pretty interesting.
Right.
Yeah, what's interesting too about the Platonic dialogues is as Plato's work progresses, like from his early to his middle work to his later work, they become less and less like dialogues, and they just become more and more like monologues. So, like if you read something late, like the Laws or the Timaeus, it's mostly just one guy talking the whole time. And there's debates as to why. Like some people think it's just like, oh, he was like, I don't need this format, like whatever. I just want to tell people what I want to tell people. But some people uh, some people think it's because it's the more he distances himself from like stuff that Socrates would actually have said, he he goes away from the dialogue style more. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
not very relevant to what we're talking about, but it's just an interesting like
Yeah,
scholarly debate around Plato.
Yeah, it's definitely the case, I'd say. Like the Timaeus, it's presented as a discussion. At
Yeah.
least early in the Timaeus, it is a discussion. But like
Yeah.
as soon as like the actual thought starts coming out, it's just one guy speaking.
Yeah.
So it's just like a huge flashback, basically.
Yeah.
you spend your entire time in this one guy's mind.
Yeah.
It's a total fake
Yeah.
conversation. Like one person, usually Socrates, will just be like going off and off like for a paragraph and a half, and then the other person, like Glaucon, will just be like, "Of
Mhm.
course,
Yeah.
correct."
Yeah, he
maybe
got tired
maybe
of writing, of course. So he was just
yeah
like, I'll just do
maybe
a monologue.
maybe people just had longer attention spans back then. Because I don't know if somebody also if somebody like said that much to me like in an instance, I think I'd have more to say than just of course.
Yeah.
But I guess all of the interlocutors have learned that if they even try to like fight back, they're just gonna get owned. So they're just shut up.
Yeah.
Other than like Protagoras, I think Protagoras was one of the only like books or like essays or whatever that Socrates, I wouldn't say got owned, but like like he was bested in one way or another by the
Yeah.
sophists. I can't think of any other dialogue where he was like a proper fight was put up against any argument he was making.
Well, I mean, there's kind of in the Republic, there's the Thrasymachus one, but then he just kind of gets angry and leaves. You know,
Yeah.
like the at the very beginning of the Republic, the guy who says that what is it? What's what's good is what's best for the stronger or whatever.
Yeah.
That guy. Yeah, so that one's kind of like that one feels like a genuine argument, but then he leaves at the very beginning of the book, and then the rest of the book is just like, oh, of course, yes, of course, Socrates.
Here, I guess I'm gonna read off some of the notes that I had from um I watched too many lectures and like things about like introducing myself to like Italian, like the scene and all that. Um, let's see. So yeah, some of the scholarly debates going on. Or no, let's talk about like some of the key arguments of the Prince or like some background stuff is on political realism. So as I kind of mentioned earlier on, is that Machiavelli kind of like split the difference between or like just like put a foot down between what's ethical or what's moral and what should be political or what should be sought for power and stuff like that. So a type of like pragmatic ruling emphasized on human nature and self-serving, ambitious stuff. So like the appetitive in Socratic terms. And then there's like a big talk about fear versus love, right? Obviously, Machiavelli thinks that, or when he was writing this, he wants to treat two sets of people differently. He wants to treat the common people a lot differently than the aristocratic people, and he must be a lot more afraid and wary and careful with the aristocratic people because them who are usually a little more intelligent, have a lot more influence, and also are a lot more like brave or like willing to make moves, right? And it's them that they should be careful of because who's gonna put a family out of power, another family or like another noble, uh, like guild or something like that. So it's fear versus love, and he says that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But I think that was only in reference to the aristocratic people. He would have preferred being loved by the people, which is like a super, I don't know, that might be controversial, but I think he would have rather been loved by the people.
Yeah. And that's sort of in connection with his idea of being petulant or careful. Um,
What is pension?
where if you it's like aggressive or arrogant.
Okay.
Um, sort of like
Petulant.
if yeah. Um, well, at least that's in the context of his work. That's what it seems to be. You're daring, maybe, or demanding of something that that might not be reasonably demanded. Um, so his idea being more careful versus being more petulant. He says that the person who's more petulant is more likely to overcome nature because nature is a woman. I mean, and not nature, fortune, because fortune is a woman that can be beat down. Um, um, so yeah, you have that same idea there, where petulance seems to correspond with being hated, being almost like crossing a sort of boundary, right? Um, with the people, it seems to for him, it seems that's what seems to get you on top. If it comes down to choosing both, of course, sometimes being careful or being Um, loved perhaps has its advantages.
Where did Chris go?
Sorry, I'm back. I had
Oh.
to get some water.
It's a pick your nose.
I had to fart. So I muted myself. Um, no, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe after like reading a lot more or like some more of it, I'll be able to make a position or like have an argument or like have a stance on whether or not this book was written as a warning or like as a courting to the people in power. Don't know. I don't know.
To the people in power, according you mean like an actual like guidance of them, like an actual attempt to guide them.
Yeah, like sending it to the Medici family, saying like, "Hey guys, like I'm a smart guy. Let me join your team. I want to rule as well. Here's the rule book. Like let's party."
Yeah,
Versus being like
honest versus being like what?
versus being like hey everyone, hey population, hey masses. These are the things you should watch out for. To the people in
Mm.
power.
Well, it seems like I don't know if the dangers posed in the book. Well, I mean it's both, right? He's warning the governing families or governing people what pitfalls uh, are are before them as rulers. But it's also a recommendation of what to do and the proof that he knows what to do um,
Yeah,
to
and
gain
like something
their favor.
Yeah, something interesting to keep in mind is that when he's talking about a Republican government, I don't think it's the Republican government or like a republic government the way we understand it, because back then in Italy,
Mhm.
um, every Republican government was kind of composed of like three parts, a little bit different than the way we're set up. It was composed between um, like a monarchy, an aristocracy, and a popular government. So it wasn't just a popular government when he's talking about the republic, which is I think like a good
Mhm.
thing to keep in mind. And he also I think he makes a couple like claims or like there's a couple passages where he thinks that the what was it the monarchy should be the one that holds the most power in any type of republic,
Mhm.
which is super like I don't know what the word is, but like it goes against like common sense of what we understand a republic to be.
Mhm. It seems a lot like our republic. Just that the difference being that the president or the sort of the executive, right, isn't he isn't subjected to popular vote. Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah, and in
yeah.
right, and the right, but the idea is still there. I mean, our founding fathers meant the executive to be energetic, and to be a spearhead. I think that's Machiavelli's idea that the head should unite the the principality, should be a spearhead, and to do that he needs power. Um, yeah, I
Was
think that's what's going on.
Yeah, do you think this whole like book or like this whole work was about more so getting into power or more so maintaining power?
Um, I think it's about. I mean, it's both maintaining power and getting power. He talks about um, the ways that somebody who doesn't come from a noble family, um, the ways that somebody who doesn't have money or riches can come to be a prince, um, or a governor. Um, but that's when he's exploring that. He's like, oh, what are the different types of ways that someone can become a prince? But then he moves on to, okay, well now what should you do with your power? How do you maintain your power? How do you expand your power?
I think that was one of the strong like that was one of the supporting points for the interpretation of the book being like an honest thing because Machiavelli was not originally rich. He was like pretty. I wouldn't say like poor, like peasantly poor, but like he wasn't well off in his family. They were just kind of like scraping by to be like somewhat modest. So if that was the case, then it makes sense that he would write this type of book. He was maybe trying to get into power coming from the position from where he was.
Yeah, he does say that's one of his recommendations he makes. He says that if you're someone who's sort of lacking in money or fame, that you need to make friends with people who have what you are missing.
And good God, is that still real today? Like,
Yeah.
network.
Chris, how much are we reading? How much are we reading, Chris?
How much are we reading?
Do you
Yeah,
have a
how are we
plan?
splitting it up? I think we can tackle the book in two more sessions. Split it in half.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just because I mean it would be like 40 pages per week more or less. Let's see. We can do like something like what chapter 10 then for the next meeting and then the rest for the meeting after. Something like that. What do you guys think?
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I can
Wait,
do
like
that.
finish chapter 10, or is the
Yeah,
end of chapter 10?
that's at least in my edition that's 39 pages.
That's reasonable.
Reasonable. Yeah.
I'm gonna be in the span of 5 days, including today. I'm also gonna be reading um, three rival moralities or versions of moralities by McIntyre after
Oh
Virtue,
yeah,
and
yeah.
a really interesting work called um, Eccentric Culture, which is making the claim that to be European means to have the sort of spirit of inferiority, which he characterizes as this idea of recognizing that there's a superior culture that you have to adhere to and preserve. And I'm reading all that because I'm gonna meet with a professor on Friday and discuss it. So it's gonna be like at least 8 hours of reading a day. Um,
Oh my
so
God! Wait, you're reading? So you're reading After Virtue and the three rival conceptions in one
yeah,
week? Is that what you said? That's
yeah,
gonna be tough.
along with that other third book. So
Yeah.
yeah,
What's the other book
I do
called?
eccentric culture.
I don't know
Sort
about
of the
that.
idea that in the title, that your culture is actually exterior to you. That
Hmm.
you're not central to it. Um, and sort of it's that recognition that sort of characterizes the European spirit that
Yeah.
you should move towards that central culture. Um,
Interesting. That's
in a
super
way.
intuitive to me as culture
Yeah,
only on the outside.
yeah.
Why is that unintuitive?
I don't think like when you ask them like, oh, like what's your culture? It seems like something like that is part of you, right?
Oh
Like when
yeah,
you're
yeah.
defining yourself or something like anything intrinsic about yourself, your culture would be something there versus something on the outside. Like the whole nature nurture debate, like
Hmm.
comes it becomes a part of you at the end of the day.
I think in
Yeah. I mean,
pursuing it, it becomes a part of you. Yeah. At least if we're working under this
yeah,
like for it's external, right?
that's interesting. I'd
Um,
be interested to see what his argument is. It does sound interesting though.
I haven't read it. I'm just
Yeah.
that's what I've been explained it's about.
Dude, take your time with After Virtue, man. I mean, I know you have a week, but that book is so amazing. So
Yeah.
amazing.
I'm a slow reader by um voluntarily. Like I can
Yeah.
read fast, but if I did, I tend to like not think about things as much as I should. I definitely have more to say about something if I take my time.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, dude, bring your notes or bring everything you like learned to that or from that to the
All right,
next topic. I also want to. I'm
of course.
Are you?
sorry, go for it.
No, sorry. I was gonna ask if you're. Are you Catholic, Ego?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, dude. McIntyre. McIntyre is the way. That's the
Yeah, no,
like.
yeah.
because that's actually what got me interested in McIntyre at first, was because because he used to be like a Marxist, like he was a very big Marxist, and he wrote this back when he was a Marxist, he wrote this paper about Aristotle, where he was basically just like criticizing, like lambasting Aristotle, like saying that he's like the famous term is like he calls Aristotle a supercilious prig, uh, and then like personal insults, whatever. Prig, a supercilious prig, like a pompous, over moralizing. Um, and then but then I was like, wait a second, but this guy is now a virtue ethicist. So I was like so interested to see, uh, that trajectory. So then I read After Virtue, and I don't know, he's just so incredible. Like he's
Yeah,
so good.
I learned about him, well, from that same professor, but from another professor as well, who in that ethics class she was talking about how a lot of the Enlightenment philosophers sort of tried to develop moral theories
Yeah,
in isolation from their culture.
yeah,
Um, but that's
exactly.
characteristic of the Enlightenment. Um, so, you sort of don't have a common culture anymore, a Christian culture that sort of that sort of unifies discussion. So everyone has to sort
Yeah,
of try to fill in that void in the absence of a common culture. Um,
yeah.
but that sort of
No, that,
makes the moral the pursuit of sort of moral theory almost impossible.
well, yeah, that's I mean, that's like the first half of the book, which I think is the better half, where he just tried tracing this like disaster that's happened, where we've become unable to talk about morality. And it's true. I mean, you just take any, like take like a hot political debate, right? You have the abortion debate, and it's like that is like so perfectly characterizes like talking past each other, like
Yeah,
which is kind of the flavor of modern, debate, where it's like on one side they're saying, oh, we're pro-life, and on the other side we're saying, well, we're pro-choice. So it's like they're not valuing the same thing, and there's no sort of rubric, cultural rubric, independent of just their like personal whims that they can appeal to in order to settle the debate, and it's just a total disaster. And I think
mm,
he does like such a incredible job of tracing that, all the way from uh, the Greeks through to the Enlightenment and then into the modern day, like the disaster that we're in now. And it is kind
yeah,
of I mean, it ends on a hopeful note, but not that hopeful. I don't know.
yeah. I
to
just
that.
don't. I don't know how you would go about solving the problem. There's just so many conflicting traditions in the United States.
Yeah,
I'd say. Um,
yeah.
I don't know unless you want to like divide the United States, segregate it. I don't know how you're
Yeah.
gonna go about
Well,
it.
it's an interesting thing too, because
Yeah.
when he wrote After Virtue, he wasn't Catholic yet. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I haven't read much about his conversion, but it does seem like Catholicism is almost this like ultimate tradition, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like there
Sort of
there is
synthesizing so many flavors.
yeah, but it's also like every question that you could ever ask, there are resources to help you answer. There's not necessarily going to be a straightforward answer, but you have the church fathers, and you have the whatever, the catechism. Like there's a way to begin reasoning about the question, which is, so I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
if
but it's
that's
also I think that's also a product of the well, actually, no, I wouldn't say it's even a product of the age of the religion, because even early on, it sort of had this pursuit of interacting with all other sorts of thoughts. If you look at like Islam or Judaism, they didn't really start interacting with philosophical
yeah.
accounts until after Christianity had begun, and that's really interesting because Christianity is the newer of the two, I'd say. Or actually, no, Islam might be a
Well,
little
Islam is newer.
on the
Yeah,
same part, maybe a little
yeah.
bit. So same in terms of age. Um,
Well,
but yeah,
I mean,
it's really interesting that it.
I definitely don't think I definitely don't think that it's a product of how old Catholicism is, because
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, you look at, I mean, the oldest religion is paganism, right? And it's like
Right.
I don't think that the Romans, or even like take like a very old religion like Hinduism. There is, Hinduism is so broad it's so fragmented. Like there's even a question of whether you can call it a coherent religion, that there isn't this like big unified Hindu orthodoxy and tradition where you can like kind of find answers to all of questions. I mean, of course, there's like small Hindu traditions where you can have that, but it's not. I don't think it's comparable to Catholicism where it's like this. It's I don't know. I think it's just the scale and the
unity.
amount of resources, the amount of text, the amount of unity. Yeah,
Unity, yeah.
it's different from.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say it's I think Islam is I don't know too much about Islam or Judaism, but it seems that out of the three, Christianity is like the most concerned with universality. Like it's
Yeah.
of the three, it seems like its mission is almost political in character in the respect that politics is about the relation of man to man. So in that sense, Christianity wants to sort of carry the message as far as it can. In order to do that, I think it's going to have to, have a philosophical account, and it's going to have to enter into discussion with multiple people coming from different perspectives.
Yeah. I mean, even from the beginning, right? Paul, he goes and he talks to the Stoics, he talks to the Epicureans, right? In Acts, it's like from the beginning, there was an understanding that it's like, okay, well, if this message is for everyone, then we have to learn how to speak to everyone, right? So it is a.
I don't know if you find that in Islam.
I mean,
I think
I don't know. I
think
also don't know much about Islam.
I've read Al-Farabi and Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd. But within that tradition, it seems like the people that they want to argue with aren't necessarily those who are outside the faith, but those who are inside the faith. So their conversation seems to be almost exclusively with their own. But I'm not sure. That's just my impression right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we're very off topic. I don't know if you.
Tangential, but still awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we'll wrap up now. I need to. Well, you guys can stay here if you want, but I need to rock and roll. Get my life in order.
All right.
My life's kind of in shambles right now. But
I'm sorry.
I guess we can meet up next week, same time more or less, and then first 10 chapters more or less.
Also, I wanted to ask: is there any chance we could move it just like 1 hour forward, or
Sure.
1 or 2, 1.5, 1 hour? Just because I have to wake up at 5:30. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But if it doesn't work, it's fine. I mean, it's good to wake up early.
No, that's cool. This like the group of people here are a lot different than the Republic group. So like, if you guys keep coming and all that, then I feel like it should work. Well, yeah, it won't be like too tough for anyone to shift an hour over. So let's do that. 3. I'll change like the event settings or whatever on Discord. 3 o'clock Pacific time and then 7 a.m. Hong Kong time. That should be cool. I'll bring more notes. I'll be like a little more prepared next time. I wasn't able to do like as much reading or like as much preparation as I would have liked. But yes, first 10 chapters. We'll do that next time, 1 hour after now, a week.
All right. One last question, Chris. So last meeting you mentioned that you didn't enjoy Plato's or the political aspect of Plato's Republic. Do you not enjoy politics as a whole? And if so, why the prince?
I was actually like going to bed last night. I was thinking exactly that. It's like I literally said, and I still think like I'm not very interested in politics. I don't care much for like social stuff or whatever. But then this Machiavelli has been on my like reading list for so long, and it's a short book, and I don't know. Maybe I am coming around to like caring a little bit more about social structures and politics and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly feel like it's a good like continuation of the Republic. To, like read the
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There's also the cultural value of reading the Prince because it's influential. But yeah, I think as philosophers we should, in philosophy as a whole, there seems to be like a tendency, at least in modern times, to like be really purist in that we don't want to talk about the political. There's just too much compromise there, right? But if we think like Plato, he's trying to give an account of the whole, and that like that includes the political order, I'd say.
I also think it's like because I don't love politics or because I don't love all this like social stuff
Mhm.
in society. That's why I should probably read a little more on it or like force myself
Yeah.
to engage with it a little bit more. It's because I don't really like it. I don't know if that's the right way to go about things, but like,
Yeah, definitely not doing things because you don't like them doesn't seem to be a good unless you want to like completely want to overcome your biases,
yeah.
maybe. But I think some biases are good. Um, so
I will say,
maybe
Chris,
yeah.
I don't like the political stuff either. I don't know why you picked this book, but it'll be good. Out of my comfort zone.
I feel like it's kind of like it's like coconut for me. Like I really don't like coconut, but I want like coconut. So I'll force myself to like
Oh,
drink
okay.
coconut milk or like coconut water, but I don't like it, but I want to like it. Same shit with like
Why do you want to like
I
coconut?
don't know. I feel like everyone raves about it, and it's like, dude, coconut's
Oh,
so good. It's like I want to be
You
on board.
know,
coconut is so
that's so
amazing.
funny, dude. Because I do this exact same thing when I like every food, and it's because whenever I don't like something, I just force myself to like it. Like I just eat it. I try it in as many dishes as possible. Actually, as of yesterday, I like celery now. So there you go.
I fucking
Celery was like the holdout. Yeah. No, but it's good. Like I've been making like soups with celery. It's good.
yeah.
It has to be with something else. I can't eat like straight celery, but in a soup it's nice. And like cook it with some onions and some carrots. It's nice. Okay, people are leaving because we're talking about celery.
Bro,
That's
everything
okay.
for grabs in philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll catch you guys next week, 1 hour after, so you can get a little bit more sleepy sleeps, and then
Yeah,
yeah, cool
Sounds
beans.
good.
All
Yeah,
right, thanks for coming.
you guys.
Catch you on the flip.
of course.
Bye.
Yep.